When you sit down to study Spanish, do you find yourself getting so overwhelmed with all of the things that you could be learning that you don't even know where to start? Maybe you start with a certain lesson and then you end up having questions and going down this rabbit hole, looking up a bunch of words and grammar explanations. And then before long, you're frustrated, just wondering if you've just wasted your time and if you've actually learned anything useful. I understand, I really do. But there's a formula that I've been teaching for the past 5 years. It worked really well for me. I definitely have that rabbit hole tendency as well, and it does wonders for my students. I'm gonna share it with you today. Comencemos, amigos. What's up, language leaders? I'm Erica Ray. If you're new to me, I'm a former medical interpreter turned Spanish teacher and coach. I've worked with hundreds of Spanish learners inside of my programs to help them go from nervous small talk to heartfelt conversations with family, friends, and community, whether in their hometown or abroad in a Latin American country like Mexico, where I have currently lived for the past 11 years. If that is your goal, to connect with actual people and not robots, then I invite you to my free workshop that you can find in the description box. It's going to help you get really clear on your Spanish goals and exactly how to accomplish them. When most people are learning Spanish, they do something similar to this. They learn vocabulary and grammar from different sources, slowly building up their knowledge of the language that way, and hope that one day all of that knowledge, all of those words that they're accumulating will somehow come together and allow them to be able to have the conversations that they really want to have. But that's completely backwards. Why? Well, it's not just about learning words. If it were, then we could just memorize and drill ourselves on the most common 1,000 Spanish words or 500 Spanish words or 300, whatever you want. Because of the over 93,000 words that exist in Spanish, there are only a few hundred that we tend to use on a day-to-day basis. So if only it were that easy, but it's not, for 3 main reasons. Number 1, if words aren't learned in a context that is relevant and understandable to your brain, then it's really hard for your brain to pull that word out of your passive memory where it can recognize it and move it over to your active memory where you can actually use it on the spot without thinking about it. Your brain may not really know it's time to use that word if it was learned out of context, even if technically you know what the word means. It's also going to be very difficult to put those words together. You're going to have more problems with sentence structure, aka grammar, and piecing everything together in a way that makes sense when your learning is very random and out of context. And you can't solve this by just learning and memorizing grammar rules and doing grammar exercises, because that doesn't translate to fast speaking when it's time to actually speak. No one has time to go through a conjugation list in their head to find the one conjugation that they need for this one sentence that they're saying when you're in an actual conversation. Also, just learning words once, twice, or 3 times is not enough. We need continuous repetition in order to hang on to that. But it's impossible to review all the time all of the words that we've been exposed to, and it's not even necessary. We can only review so many, so they have to be the right ones for fastest results. So which one should they be at any one time? There are so many questions. What can you do about it? Well, you need to incorporate a method I call prepare, practice, present. It's super simple. There are a couple of ways to do it. Let's start with the first one. You start with your own personal speaking goal in mind. This gives you a focus. So what's the next conversation that you're interested in having? Where are you? Who are you speaking to? What are you speaking about? And how do you feel during that interaction? Now, that last question of how do you feel may seem a little woo-woo and not important, but it really is. It will give you the motivation that you need to do the work to accomplish this goal. For example, do you feel joyous because you're finally able to really introduce yourself to your boyfriend's family and talk a bit about yourself in Spanish and ask them about themselves and understand their responses? Do you feel triumphant because you're at work, holding your own in a conversation, explaining a project, connect to a Hispanic coworker or client and you can just feel that respect and admiration from your colleagues? Do you feel relieved because you're living abroad and you're at the local market and you're able to ask for what you want confidently when you are holding your own during day-to-day interactions with people? So once you have your next scene in mind, it's time to prepare. Now you can prepare by planning what you want to say. If you're working on your self-introduction, go ahead and script out some details about yourself. Look up words you don't know. Get some help putting those words together in a natural way. Make sure you have the cultural details that you need that will make your introduction feel natural and warm. Here's where many of our students find a little guidance very helpful. It's very helpful to know what words or phrases sound natural versus very stiff and textbook can make a big difference in the impression that you make. And once you have this script, you can practice, which is step number 2. You now have a completely personalized piece of study material that you can use to study Spanish. Think about how powerful that is. Many of the best Spanish courses out there start with a context, okay? Starting with a conversation, starting with a story so that your brain has that context. And then we proceed to break it down into more manageable parts so that you can use what you've learned. So imagine taking that same concept of starting with the context, except now the context is your context. It's your story. It's whatever you personally are working on. Now you can practice by rehearsing that script out loud, repeating it several times and focusing on clear pronunciation. Since you likely would have gotten some sort of external help to create this script, there are going to be things in there that you may not understand or you don't know why they're that way. So at this point, if you find yourself going down some rabbit holes, looking up words, looking up a little, as to why the grammar is this way, it's kind of okay because at least you're still on topic. You're still working on something specific. You have a specific focus in mind. And this knowledge that you're obtaining will be helpful for this conversation and upcoming ones. Input is so important as well when you are preparing and practicing. And sometimes this input can be easy to find, especially if you're practicing something that involves a day-to-day situation, like ordering at a restaurant or going to a market, making travel plans at the airport, things like that. But it can be a lot harder when your context is so personal to you. And this is when it is so helpful to have a person who can role play with you. Because sometimes we think of input just as something that is pre-recorded. It's an audio, it's a video. Remember that we're also inputting the language when we're listening to another person speak directly to us. So if that person is working with us on our personal goals, they can not only help to role play the script, they can throw some curveballs. They can rephrase. They can say things in a slightly different way so that you have to kind of think on your feet and adjust as you learn this new vocabulary. All of that helps you get prepared and gives you the practice that you need to go into the real life conversation. This is such a great moment for feedback. Our students often record their script and send it in to us so that we can hear it, so we can give feedback on pronunciation and any other details that we notice to make sure that they're using expressions that will be well received and sound authentic. And then you present by bringing it all into a real conversation, knowing that even though the conversation isn't going to go exactly as scripted, of course, conversation is organic, but you're going into that with so much more knowledge, with more words, with more understanding of how to express yourself than if you had just walked in completely unprepared. Remember that you haven't just been preparing and practicing for this one interaction, even though it seems that way, but so much of what you're learning is going to carry over into the next conversation and the next, until you have learned and mastered quite enough words in context, and you have been exposed to and internalized the grammar to be able to speak unscripted. I love what Joan said. She's a Spanish learner that I presented this method to during a coaching session, and she said the following: I've been learning Spanish for over 10 years and have not progressed to conversational fluency. I wanted to determine how to build a language learning routine that would ensure progression toward conversational fluency while gently incorporating grammar learning. I use the term gently as my previous attempts to focus on grammar too much have left me overwhelmed and uninterested. The Prepare, Practice, Present method makes language learning a more involved method on the part of the learner and also fun. fun because I'm learning based on my interest and can immediately apply what I learn. Also, it provides a welcome distraction from my focus on what I do not know yet, the mountain of grammar rules and tons of vocabulary, to a focus on what I do know. That is so important. Language is so vast, and that's why it can feel so overwhelming. So by bringing your attention into something specific, it calms the brain, and it helps you learn in an organized way, and it helps you ensure that you are continuously learning, no matter how long that takes. Now, there is another way to do prepare, practice, present. What if you don't have a specific speaking goal in mind right now? You can still prepare, practice, present using a common everyday topic that you expect you'll need. For example, in the group portion of my program, learners prepare, practice, and present with a weekly topic, which is different every week. This could be about family, pets, travel, food, shopping, you name it. Things that have to do with our everyday lives. They have their material to prepare and practice, and then they come together up to every day. We have sessions every single day, multiple times per day, in order to continue practicing in a live setting with professional teachers and other members, and also present through these role play situations. It's an incredibly effective method. So you can see that it works whether you're one-on-one working on a really specific goal, or in a group setting working on a common topic that is relevant to many. If you'd like to understand in more detail how prepare, practice, present works and exactly how other students are using it, then you should check out my free workshop in the description below. You'll also learn some other factors that you need to keep in mind to get the best use out of it, including one simple thing that you can do right now to instantly boost your speaking and comprehension confidence. Now, as we mentioned, as prepared as you are, the conversation isn't going to go exactly how you would expect. So if you run into any trouble, be sure to use the phrases that you can use when you don't understand, which I talked about in this video, which you can check out next.